Welcome back to the podcast.
We have a great show for you today.
Okay, picture this. It is January 18th. You bought expensive running shoes, you have a brand new gym bag, and where are you? You are sitting on the sofa, eating chips, and watching an entire season of a TV show.
Oh, absolutely. Have you ever felt that? Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It is the classic New Year fail.
Welcome to the debate. Today we are looking at why human motivation just, fails us, and how we can actually beat procrastination to reach our long-term goals, like finally learning a language or sticking to a fitness routine.
Right, we are looking at recent analysis on habit formation and burnout. We are diving into the mechanics of consistency, and, the data shows a huge divide in how we view human behavior.
Exactly. The big question today is this. Is self-discipline an engineering problem? Meaning, do we just build external systems and frictionless environments to fix it? Or is it a psychological problem, solved by managing our internal energy, our willpower, and emotional rewards?
It is a really critical difference. I represent the side that says true discipline is psychological. You absolutely have to understand your internal energy, how your willpower battery drains, and use positive reinforcement.
And I take the exact opposite position. True discipline relies on the structural engineering of systems and environments, so you can bypass the need to make a conscious choice entirely.
Bypassing conscious choice? That sounds like you want to just flip a switch and turn off being human.
Not turn it off, but build a framework that fixes our flaws. Look, motivation is a feeling, and feelings change quickly. They spike when you watch an inspiring video, and they crash when it is raining outside and you had a long day at work. We need to view success as a math problem.
A math problem? Seriously? That sounds so cold.
It is structural. Think about the classic goal. I am going to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. That is a massive expectation. What happens mathematically? You hit day 4, you don't see results, the motivation disappears, and you quit. But if you engineer a system of tiny, daily actions, you remove human mistakes from the equation.
But you aren't removing mistakes, you're just...
Wait, let me finish the thought. If you automate your decisions right, like listening to an audio lesson during your commute every single day, and keeping your gym bag physically blocking your front door, you build a path of least resistance. You aren't forcing yourself to be disciplined. The system does the heavy lifting.
Okay, it sounds brilliant in theory, but your whole idea assumes we can trick ourselves into acting like machines on a track. We aren't machines. Systems are run by humans, and humans run on psychological energy. You can build the most beautiful track in the world, but if the train is completely out of fuel, it isn't moving.
But the track is designed to need less fuel. That is the whole point.
You still need a spark to start the engine. Willpower is a finite resource. Every single choice you make at work acts like a smartphone battery draining because you left too many apps open. By 6 p.m., you are running on empty. If you do not actively manage that internal state, your system collapses. You can put your gym bag by the door, sure, but if your cognitive battery is at 1%, you will just step over the bag and walk to the couch.
Well, I hear your point about the draining battery, but that actually proves why we need engineering. Let's look at tiny habits. Committing to just 5 minutes of practice. It is pure structural genius. It drastically lowers the activation energy required to start.
Wait, activation energy. That's a fancy word. It basically just means the mental effort it takes to begin a task, right?
Exactly. Think of it like a tiny gear in a machine. A tiny gear requires almost zero physical force to turn, zero battery power. But once that 5-minute gear turns, it engages the bigger gears of a daily routine. The physics of the system take over.
I love the gear metaphor, I really do. But you are looking at the gears and I am looking at the person turning them. The 5-minute rule does not work because of mechanical momentum. It works because it is a psychological safety valve. It protects our homeostasis.
Wait, hold on. Homeostasis? That's another fancy word. It basically just means our body's deep desire to stay comfortable and conserve energy.
Yes, exactly. The brain wants to be lazy. When you set a huge goal, like a 1-hour workout, The brain sees that massive effort as a threat. That is why people burn out by mid-January. They are crushed under the weight of their own goals. 5 minutes works because it tells the anxious brain, hey, we are safe. This will not exhaust our battery. It is an emotional trick.
But the emotional relief is just a bonus. The structure itself is what guarantees consistency. If my rule is that I study Spanish for exactly 5 minutes while my coffee brews, the habit compounds mathematically. It does not matter if I feel anxious, happy, or totally bored. I just run the program until it becomes a reflex.
You are completely ignoring the person running the program. Let me tell you what happens when you ignore psychology. If you hate those 5 minutes, you will eventually stop. No matter how tiny the gear is, it is an emotional trick to convince an exhausted mind that the task is easy. If the task is miserable, the trick stops working.
Okay, fair enough. But let's look at what happens when you combine that tiny gear with environmental design. This is our next big point. You can have the best system in the world, but if your phone is buzzing next to your study book, the system jams. That is why environmental design has to beat internal motivation. We have to eliminate the friction. Right. Out of sight, out of mind. Hide the junk food.
Study, you leave the textbook open on your desk the night before. You design a room where doing the wrong thing is hard and doing the right thing is the default. It is like putting bumpers on a bowling alley lane. You don't need to be a perfect bowler. You just throw the ball and the bumpers guarantee it hits the pins.
I love the bowling alley metaphor, but here is the problem. A frictionless environment does not create drive. You can have the bumpers up, you can have your textbook perfectly open to the right page, and you can still just refuse to throw the ball. A lack of friction does not mean you actually have desire.
It does not need to equal desire. If the book is open, the decision is already made. You are already in the workflow.
But the brain needs positive reinforcement to build a habit. A sterile, boring desk is not enough. This is where the material emphasizes making the habit attractive through self-bribery. Pairing the habit with a treat, like watching an exciting TV show only while you are on the treadmill, that triggers dopamine.
Wait, dopamine, that's a fancy word. It basically just means the chemical in our brain that makes us crave things and feel rewarded.
You got it. And that neurochemical reality is what actually keeps someone from ignoring the perfectly placed textbook.
I understand the brain chemistry, sure, but relying on dopamine hits through self-bribery is a massive weakness in your system. What happens when you finish the TV show or you get bored of the bribe? The system collapses. But if your discipline is built on your environment, like the junk food simply is not in the house, you did not need a dopamine spike to avoid eating it. You engineered the failure away.
You cannot engineer away free will. If you want the junk food badly enough, you will put on your coat, get in your car, and drive to the store in the pouring rain. The environment only stops you if your willpower battery is strong enough to not override the system. Which brings us to managing energy.
Let's dive into that, because the whole point of automating decisions is to conserve that battery. Every time you make a choice, you spend mental energy. By making actions automatic, you do not have to think. You bypass the battery drain entirely.
I fundamentally disagree that you can just bypass it. When do people say, oh, I will start tomorrow? They say it when their willpower is completely depleted. That is why you must tackle your hard tasks during your peak energy times, like studying or lifting weights in the morning when you feel sharp.
But if a task is truly automatic, peak energy shouldn't matter. You brush your teeth at night when you are totally exhausted, right? You do not need to be at your peak to do it because it is an ingrained system.
Brushing your teeth is easy. You have practiced it thousands of times since you were a kid. You cannot compare brushing your teeth to learning complex foreign grammar. You cannot automate mental strain. If I try to study advanced vocabulary at 9 p.m. when my battery is dead, I will fail, no matter how beautifully automated my evening routine is.
Well, I am not convinced because you are underestimating the power of the environment. I don't mean the hard task takes zero effort. I mean the decision to start takes zero effort. If I have a rule to always listen to an audio lesson in my car, I am a captive audience. The car and the routine make the decision for me.
But you still have to decide to turn on the lesson instead of your favorite music. There is always a moment of choice. And if your battery is dead, you will choose the music. The car cannot force you.
Which is precisely why we use accountability as a structural failsafe.
A structural failsafe. Wow! You make human connection sound like a backup generator.
I mean, in a structural sense it is. We use study groups or workout buddies as an external enforcement mechanism. If I am tempted to choose music over the lesson, the structure of meeting my study group forces me to do it. The friction of canceling on a friend and looking bad is higher than the friction of just doing the work. I have engineered a situation where doing the right thing is socially easier.
Listen to your vocabulary. Forces compliance, external enforcement. You are describing a prison. I completely reject this mechanical view. Accountability is not about terrifying yourself with social pressure. It is a gentle push without judgment.
A gentle push is still a structural force. It is social physics.
No, it is profound empathy. It proves that discipline relies heavily on human connection to recharge our motivation. When you are burned out, a friend checking in replenishes your psychological battery. You stick to the routine because you value the friendship, not because you're a variable in a spreadsheet trying to avoid a penalty.
Hey, whatever gets you to the gym, relax. Predictability is powerful. If I know someone is waiting for me at the track at 6 a.m., I am leveraging social pressure to bypass my own morning fatigue.
And I argue you're using a deeply human desire for belonging to give your battery a temporary charge. It is psychological. Look, if we view discipline strictly through your engineering lens, we strip away our humanity. We treat ourselves like broken software. We deny ourselves grace when we are genuinely tired.
But a well-designed system actually protects you when you are tired. If we use your psychological lens, we place a massive burden on ourselves. We have to constantly monitor our battery, search for dopamine rewards, and rely on friends. That sounds exhausting. You do not need grace if the system is strong enough to carry you.
I would counter that no system can carry you forever if you do not have internal alignment. Eventually, the human spirit rebels against a perfectly boring, optimized routine if there is no joy.
All right, well, let's summarize where we stand. I maintain that to overcome procrastination, you must engineer your life. Focus on systems, use tiny habits to lower the effort, design a frictionless environment, and use accountability as a failsafe.
And I summarize that sustaining progress is impossible without managing our human limits. We must protect our willpower battery, work during peak energy times, use positive rewards, and rely on empathetic human support.
Despite our differences, there are clear points of convergence. We both agree that massive overnight goals are wildly counterproductive.
100%. Relying purely on unmanaged motivation is a guaranteed recipe for failure. Simply waking up and hoping you feel like doing hard work never works.
Exactly. And maybe reflecting through both lenses is the best framework. Build a solid system to reduce friction and manage your energy to make sure you have the drive to live inside that system. Okay, before we go, it is time for our word tour. Here are 5 important words from today's debate, nice and slow.
Number 1, fallibility. That means the tendency to make mistakes because we're human.
Number 2, procrastination. That is when you delay doing something you know you should do.
Number 3, depleted. That means completely empty, exactly like your phone battery at the end of the day.
Number 4, friction. That means things in your environment that slow you down or make a task harder.
Number 5, routine. A habit or sequence you do regularly without thinking much about it.
Perfect. So we will leave it to the listener to decide. Do you need a better system to remove friction, or do you need to manage your energy to restore your drive?
Definitely something to think about.
Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on The Debate.